Welcome, everyone. It's the first Q&A of this year. I'll be doing those more often starting now. But it's been hopefully a great start to the new year for most of you, all of you. And I'm just reading the chat, tuning in from many different areas. I see Los Angeles, Virginia, Carolee, great to see you. Steve from LA, some folks from Australia, Janet, and Bali, of course. So the way I usually structure these live Q&As, I have some things that, in the course of just daily interactions on social media and email and so forth, I hear things and there's some questions that start to build up. So I usually answer those as part of these Q&As. But also everyone here should feel free to raise your hand. So there's a feature at the bottom of your screen that lets you raise your hand, and then one of the admins will accept you to come on stage, and you can ask a question live if you so choose. So that's how that works. And you've probably, if you've been reading some of the emails lately, been really honing in on this concept of high achiever versus top performer. And at first it may sound a little similar, but the differences are gargantuan. They can make all the difference in your life quality, in your approach to daily situations, both in your personal and your professional life. And I already see some questions. Yes. Habits around top performers. How do we shift from a high achiever? So let's go a little bit into the definition of these two terms, and so that becomes more clear. So high achievers, we're all high achievers here. We're smart. We want to make the best out of our life. We have ideas. We have interests and passions, and we want to invest ourselves in the relationships, both personal and professional. We want to invest ourselves into a situation and make something happen. But as a result of that, we often wind up chasing the goal. And that's the core trait of a high achiever. It's outcome orientedness. And there's a whole slew of behavior that ensues as a result of that. When we're always chasing outcomes, we're never really present here because we're comparing everything that's happening to what we think should be happening so that we can get to the outcome, right? So we create this plan in our head of how to get there, all the steps, all the things that need to happen, all the things that people should do or say for us to reach our goal. And then we start comparing and judging and validating everything that happens on the way to our goal, comparing it to this mental image that we carry of what we think should be happening. And so there's a built-in resistance to life as it's unfolding, because it always unfolds differently. And when you allow things to organically unfold, it takes twists and turns that you couldn't have predicted. People can't be controlled, situations can't be controlled. Everything kind of evolves and unfolds more naturally. And that's just the course of life. That's the ever-changing nature of life. Nietzsche, as they say in Buddhism, it's the impermanence. So this also applies to reaching the goal. As high achievers, we then often, if we reach the goal, often things, because they're happening differently than expected, we tend to resist them and then judge them and get demoralized. That, it's not happening according to plan. And then we get down on ourselves, and very often we throw in the towel. We give up. And that doesn't feel good either. But say we do achieve a goal, well, the first thing is it's much harder. The journey of getting there is much more difficult because we're in this resistance state and always upset about something not happening the way we want it. And then we have to deal with it, but there's this strong antagonism and lack of joy that we experience along the way. And if you ask anyone at any point, how's life treating you? We always reflect on right now, like kind of what happened today or in the last day or two. And that is usually the content of our life, is the quality of what we experience is what we are currently experiencing. And so this journey to the goal is the most important part. And you can kind of already see the difference here of how a top performer might react. In fact, they don't react, they respond. So they are more with the journey, with the fulfillment of the experience itself. And of course, you have to set a goal, but you're flowing, you're organically, you're responding to what's in front of us, as opposed to reacting, comparing it to what you think should be happening. And it's a huge difference emotionally, how you experience life. And it's not just being more calm, it's not just acceptance and surrender to what's happening. Yes, that produces incredible calm and just flow, but it also opens you up to opportunity, things that you wouldn't expect otherwise. There's incredible creativity in life. The way things unfold, there's always a lesson. So a lesson-oriented mindset is important. Okay, what is this teaching me? This is I was reading a book by Deepak Chopra recently, and this is really one of the ways to turn negative karma, into something positive. So every karma being essentially cause and effect. And rather than just paying your karmic debt by suffering through a situation, you can take on this lesson-oriented mindset. What is this trying to teach me? And that shifts the experience from just the pure suffering of it, and like, I did something to deserve this and now I have to go through it, into this positive, accelerated, uplifting experience of like, what is this telling me about myself? What is this showing me that I can learn from, and thus move out of it more quickly, experience it more positively, and prevent it from happening again. Get out of our behavioral patterns that way. So again, that's a very different mindset of a top performer. And the word performance is in there, right? So this imagine a stage actor or an athlete who are in their body, who are in the present moment, and they're performing. And it's less about the outcome. Yes, there will be applause at the end or some acknowledgement, but the performance aspect of it is a present-minded aspect. And so top performers experience more joy along the way. If they reach their goal, there's less attachment to it. We haven't built up all this pressure, like a high achiever is so pressurized, right? That you keep building up and like, this has to happen, this needs to work out, and everything is focused on that goal, and it becomes really you become a controlling and kind of pressurized person. It really isn't enjoying life along the way. And some goals are long-term goals. You could go a year or a decade chasing some goal, some outcome, and you're sacrificing your happiness along the way for all that time. And then you reach it, and as we've all experienced at this point, anyone that's lived a few years, any high achiever that's pursued something will have noticed that when you do reach the end goal, it's kind of short-lived. And that's because, again, the life continues. There is this idea that once you reach something, it's just the way the mind works. It creates a snapshot of like, once I get there, I'll be happy. Happy when syndrome. And it's not the case. When you get there, enjoy it for however long it lasts, and then it fades again. Life doesn't stand still. New challenges, new opportunities, new moments come into your experience. And that then you have to keep living. And the accolades from whatever goal you achieved will fade, and you have to keep growing as a person. And so, we often, sometimes we even outgrow our goals, where if we've been pursuing something long enough, we mature along the way, and then suddenly some goal that we really wanted to achieve at some point suddenly doesn't feel so important anymore. That can happen as well. So that's another trap of the high achiever mindset, is that these long-term goals, we pursue things, and often along the way we postpone things. We postpone a vacation or a creative project. We'll say later when I have time, because I'm focused on this other goal. And if you do, when that time comes, if you do turn your attention back to the trip you wanted to take, suddenly it no longer resonates. Or the creative project that you were wanting to start, it's not so important anymore, because you've evolved as a person. So it's really, really, really important to live in sync with your desires, with your passions, with what's actually happening right now, the opportunities that present themselves. And that's what top performers do. They're in sync with life, with the unfolding of life. They see, they respond, they're engaged with their senses. Remember, our senses pull us into the present moment. If we're actually seeing what we're seeing, hearing what we're hearing, feeling what we're feeling, this is what pulls us into right now. There's lots of little exercises and tips and tricks I talk about in my blogs and my workshops about how to become more focused on right now. It's little things like, when you make your bed in the morning, is to feel the fabric of the sheets and pay attention to that. Because when you're present with what your senses are engaged with, there's no past or future. There's only right now. There's no room for fear or anxiety to crop up. It's all right now. And it's okay to have thoughts of the future, but that's more an intention. Right? The concept of intention versus attention. You can only give your attention to what's happening right now. And that which you give your attention to makes up the content of your life, the happiness or the sadness that you experience. It's whatever you give your attention to. So all the more important to be aware of one's thoughts and one's feelings. This is where some of the thought awareness meditation that I teach comes into play. The body scanning awareness that I teach comes into play, so that a part of us, 30 to 50% of our awareness should always be anchored in what are we feeling, what are we sensing, what are we experiencing right now. It should always be with our body. And that's a big shift in the way we operate. If we're, again, just chasing, high achievers love to chase those outcomes, and they kind of forget about themselves, and they're willing to sacrifice their happiness and their joy, and relationships aren't as great because it's all dictated by this pressure to follow the script. But a top performer is in their body. Again, the example of an athlete or an actor, actress, they're connected to their senses, and that's what keeps them present. And that's really what keeps us happy ultimately, because in that embodiment, we're no longer in our head. We're using our mind for what it's good for, which is for organizational purposes, planning purposes, analytical purposes, but as a tool, not as the central command that drives our behavior, because we're just reacting. We're using the mind when we need it, when we want it. We are anchored in our physical presence, in our awareness of self, and then we can use the mind for for what it's good for, and rather than this monkey mind that ordinarily dictates, how we operate and how we feel. Okay, I see some questions coming up on the screen. How can individuals measure and track their progress towards becoming a top performer and continuously refine their approach? Nice. Ha. Well, as we talked about, the ability to react less and respond more is one of the key traits of a top performer. So something that even in my journey, I started to recognize that, oh, my practice is working. My self-awareness practice, consisting of meditation, of breath work, of a lot of self-help, books, audiobooks, working with teachers and following people, and having little reminder post-its on my mirrors, and just being more open to things like sound baths and astrology and quantum field and whatever your interests may be, just to really absorb that and make that more of the content of your life, because then it starts to build on itself and you become more aware of why are things happening? What is this telling me? As I mentioned, the example of what is the situation showing me about myself? Because every situation is always a reflection of who you are. We experience life, every single one of us, through this internal makeup lens, this mental lens that everything runs through that filter. And so that's why even two people witnessing the same situation have very different experiences often. Or if you get together with some friends or family members and you reminisce about a past event, everyone has a different memory. You can't even believe it, because you're so sure that the way you remember it is how it happened. And often fights break out because you so insist on your version of what happened, because especially older memories, you've since integrated it into your identity, and you've walked around with this story. It's part of your personal narrative. And now somebody in your group of friends or your sibling or parent is remembering it differently. And sometimes they don't remember it at all. And it was so important to you. Or the way we influence people. I have students from 10 years ago come up to me and say, this thing you said or that thing was so instrumental and formative, and I don't even remember when that happened or what I said. Or if I do, it's like, oh, really? That was just like a little side note, but it impacts people. So we don't know. We can't even begin to know how we influence each other. Most important thing is to keep a high vibe and not to get too attached to the importance of things. That if you have a presentation at work or you're doing a talk online, that you don't get too attached to, whoa, I wanted to hit this note and say it like this and that, and people perceive things in their own way. You can take the pressure off and just go with the flow. So this ability to go with the flow, as opposed to insisting that things should happen a certain way, that's something noticeable in the way you can track your shift from high achiever to top performer. You just feel less stressed. And however you gauge that for yourself, that could be a journaling activity. If you're already journaling, if not, I highly recommend it. Even if it's just 5 minutes, take stock at the end of the day is great. In the morning, it tends to be more something like, what am I looking forward to in this day? I found. And if you journal in the evening, it's more reflective of what happened in the day. So morning and evening would be great. But even if you just do it once, is maybe you have a little scale, a ranking system of 1 to 10 of how stressed you are. And then you can just rate how you experience things a little more smoothly every day. You're less reactive. So that's one way to track. And journaling is just good generally because it's the practice of self-reflection. Thoughts, when they're in the realm of thinking, are these nebulous things that just jump around. It's the monkey mind. But if you start writing things down or speaking them out loud, they tend to crystallize and then they become more real. So that's why journaling is so powerful. And try to journal with a pen and paper as opposed to just typing, because there's something visceral and substantial about, we've evolved feeling things, and pen on paper is much more of an actual sensation than typing on a keyboard. Okay, we have another question here. Stuart from Island Islands. Wow, I don't even know where that is. In what ways do top performers maintain a healthy work-life balance to prevent burnout and sustain long-term success? Okay, it's a great question. There's many different ways. Some of my recent blog posts, articles speak about this. We've been doing some live workshops around this as well. So I implore you to join those. Many of those are free to attend. And also with the Inner Power membership, you get a free 30-day trial. So we're making all of this available in a very straightforward and affordable way. These are kind of more life hacks, such as the idea of focusing on one thing at a time. Often when we think about the bigger picture, we get overwhelmed. And this is a typical high achiever thing. It's over planning, overthinking, because you're so focused on the outcome. You tend to sit and stew in, like, what does it take to get there? And then you start to get lost in these thoughts about it, and it becomes bigger and bigger and more overwhelming. And so one of the things there is to literally, if a thought feels overwhelming, the idea of, oh my gosh, I've got to do this, and all the steps it takes, right? Again, this high achiever mindset of trying to plan things out and control things and steer. Or you're about to take a big trip and you've got a million things to keep track of, or you're just balancing work life and your personal life and maybe kids and then a passion project, and just all of this is just juggling a lot of stuff. Well, if it feels overwhelming, scale it down to a thought that feels less overwhelming. You can take an idea of something, oh my gosh, I've got to do all these things, and reduce it to the point where it doesn't feel so overwhelming. And heck, while we're at it, reduce it even more to where it feels light. And hey, let's make it fun even. An example I bring up is my mom, who had triple bypass, and after heart surgery was afraid of taking these big trips. She lives in Germany, and I was in California at the time. That was a long trip for her, and it was an overwhelming thought to have to go travel for so many hours, and all these people at the airports, and so what we did with her, we just did a simple exercise of focusing, bringing the thought down to, okay, well, what doesn't feel overwhelming? What feels light? What feels easy? Well, I'm folding my clothes. It's my favorite clothes. There's memories attached to them. And you just focus on that thought, that activity. And then you're putting your clothes into the suitcase and you're focusing on that. And then you take the suitcase and you bring it to the stairs. And then you call the cab and you focus on each of these activities one at a time. Everything suddenly becomes easy because, hey, it is easy. So it's just reducing your mindset so that the accumulation of thoughts of this bigger idea that feels so scary, reduce it down to something that doesn't feel scary. You're still going to get there. In fact, you're going to get to where you need to go more quickly, which is another top performer trait, is that you actually, by flowing and reducing your scope and being less stressed and responding to opportunities that you would otherwise miss because you're insisting on that high achiever controlling mindset, suddenly you actually get to your goals. You achieve things more quickly and with greater ease and with greater joy. And that's a key difference in how you then navigate and experience life. So another way would be to, similarly, is to focus, create your to-do list, but don't jump around between the to-do items. Again, focusing on one thing at a time. Most of our stress comes from jumping between ideas. So if we stay with one task, complete that task, then move on to the next task, suddenly you're completing the same task, but with greater efficiency and productivity, because you're not burning so much energy and stress and then making mistakes because your mind is already jumping to other things. What this boils down to, however, is that you have to be aware of your thoughts. So if you catch yourself drifting to, oh, I need to do that other thing, or this person is waiting for my call, and so forth, then it's important, again, to have a mindfulness practice where you catch yourself thinking about other things. If you don't have that mind awareness, your mind is just going to rule you, and you will be lost in thought about all the other things you have to do, giving only partial attention to what you're doing, which makes it more error prone. And you lose the satisfaction, the depth, and the confidence from completing the task and really doing it right, because your mind is all over the place. So again, a mindfulness practice, which we'll do at the end of the session today, is so key to noticing when your mind drifts, to simply notice it without frustration, bring it back to where you want your attention to go. So I hope that was helpful. Another question from Dimas. How important is emotional intelligence for top performers? And how can one enhance their emotional intelligence? That's a good one. I would say, and some of this is how do you define emotional intelligence? And I would say it is the quality of your awareness. So some people may say you're born with more empathy or less empathy, things like that, which there's some truth to that. But more importantly is that you develop an awareness about yourself. This journey is all about know thyself, right? Going back to ancient Greek saying, and that is ultimately the purpose of our life. And everything we do is a reflection of how well we know ourselves. The quality of our relationships, the way we approach getting things done, is a reflection of how well we know ourselves. So top performers know themselves better. In the transformation from just a high achiever, where you get things done, but it's, again, in this stressed, controlling way, to a top performer who is in the moment, is responding to opportunities, unexpected events, is able to see the path of least resistance and not burn extra energy on, hey, I want it to be different. Why is this happening to me, right? All of this falls away. So that frees up a lot of energy, and that is being emotionally intelligent, not wasting so much time on thoughts of resistance to something that's already happened. This is one of the funniest things about the mind, is that it reacts to something that has already happened and wants it to be different. And nothing that has already happened will ever be different by you being in resistance to it. So again, the emotional intelligence arises from within us, when we're able to calm that mind, create awareness, live from the awareness, and not from the reaction to our environment. Because then we're just at the mercy of our environment. Things will happen always, things happen around us. And if we're not aware of our own response to that situation, then we're slaves to the situation. We're at the mercy of things happening around us. And that's, again, how high achiever mindset tends to want to control things, to keep them from triggering us. But a top performer recognizes, why am I triggered? And you feel the trigger, you notice the trigger, you're aware of the trigger. Being aware of the trigger diffuses the control it has over you. You're no longer reacting to being triggered a certain way. You're observing it, you're aware of it, and you can, what does this say? What is this teaching me? You can go within and release the stuck feelings that are at the root of a trigger. And rather than go through life with this bundle of stuck feelings inside of us that are constantly at the potential for feeling triggered is constantly there, which is just not a pleasant state to be in. And when you become more aware of that, then you start to realize the importance of working on yourself. And that's where your personal journey tends to really kick into high gear. But from this self-awareness, you're able to make smarter decisions, keep a clear head, and then clear decisions, smart decisions lead to clear outcomes and bear the type of fruit that you want to harvest. As they say, be mindful of the seeds that you sow. I saw another question come up. Yeah, great comments as well, as I'm just checking Andy there. Self-discipline, I always focus on the process, not the outcome. Yes, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Oh, from Portugal, Anderini. I push myself so hard to try to get everything done, meet deadlines, and make everyone happy. I feel myself feeling exhausted mentally, emotionally, and physically. How can I manage this and still achieve my personal and professional goals? So this great question. This goes into the direction of what we just touched on. A top performer, well, let me start with the high achiever mindset. A high achiever also is a people pleaser, and they haven't fully put themselves first and front, right, at the front of their life experience. So there's an attachment there to what other people think of you, how, what are they saying, feeling there's a dependency there on making people happy for your own happiness. There's also a sense of greater vulnerabilities, that you're more likely to absorb other people's perspectives as your truth. And instead of living from your own truth, again, shifting to the top performer is much more in their own truth and in their body wisdom. So they're able to hear what other people's are saying and suggesting, but not just accept them at face value. They're able to discern more fluidly and more clearly of whether something resonates or not. Your inner wisdom, is this feeling when something is your truth, you feel it. It's not a mental thing. It's a body sensation. So you've heard maybe of the term a full body yes or a full body no. And these are physical sensations, body sensations in response to what's happening around you. And the top performer, being much more embodied, less mental, more connected to their sensations. Again, I mentioned earlier, between 30 and 50% of our awareness should always be with how am I feeling, because this is your wisdom. This is your sensory apparatus, your body, that tells you whether a situation is for you or not for you, whether you should take action there in one particular way, or if you should walk away and back off. And there's this amazing GPS that is built into us. But when we're just in our head, we miss out on that. We're just focused on the outcome. We miss out on that. If we're judging things and we're just absorbed in past and future and absorbed in thought and lost in thought, we miss out on this GPS that's in our body that tells us when there's danger. It tells us when something doesn't feel right. We talk like this often. It doesn't feel right. Well, the more we are in our body, the more we know if something doesn't feel right or if it feels good for you to pursue. Depending on your personality, you might need to do more research, right? Sometimes some people have an instant hit of, yeah, this is for me or not. Other people need to lean into it a little more. I kind of have both experiences, but often I need to research and lean into a situation to get some more data, some more input, and then I'll know whether it feels right or not. So I hope that helps with that question. I see some more comments. Steve from LA. Yes, one day at a time in AA and other programs. When you're overwhelmed with thoughts or feelings, just the next time, our next indicator, there are lots of studies. Yes. Yeah. One step at a time. If you've lived any number of years, which doesn't have to be much, even as a kid, I remember like planning things or wanting things, and then just life happens differently. And sometimes back then, maybe you blame your parents or you blame whoever, classmates. You're not, a full person yet, so you lack a little bit of the bigger picture. But there's already a growing sense that life is not happening the way I want it. And that only gets more intense as we grow up. All right, here from Steve. How do I do the next indicated action when really resistant or in old traumatic fear? Okay. Yeah, so this is one of the things in your transformation from high achiever to top performers. You're going to run into your triggers, and those triggers often are fear related. And when you're feeling triggered, you get pulled into that pain, and it gets hard to think clearly and make clear decisions. Could you pull the curtain on that? It's shining in. The sun is rising here in Bali, and it's getting to be a really bright day. There as well. Thank you. So as you run into your triggers, the first task is going to be, okay, set whatever you were trying to take action on aside, to set it to the side for just a moment, and use this as an opportunity to look within. If it's a massive traumatic trigger, you may need a bigger support network or therapy or other things to work on that. But for most of our triggers are just small. We react to a person that reminds us of somebody, or we react to a situation because, again, as a high achiever, it's happening differently than we thought it would, than we wanted it. And so where somebody cuts us off in traffic, or our battery dies, and I was using my shaver a couple of days ago, and mid-shave, the battery died, and it wouldn't recharge. And so I was stuck with half a shave. So there's little things that happen all the time that trigger us, and that can consume us if we're reacting to each one of those. Why is this happening? It shouldn't be happening. Always, why me? It's always happening to me. All these extra thoughts that we burn energy on. So coming out of the reactivity to the trigger that's the opportunity in the situation when you feel triggered. And that's when, like I said, just kind of set the action aside for just a moment and use this to look for the sensation in your body. Where do you experience this trigger? And observe it, examine it. We do a monthly workshop where I take you through the exercise of releasing stuck feelings that are the source of the trigger. And once you dissolve those, then you no longer feel triggered. Again, the top performer transition is getting to know yourself and having to confront some of these things that we've been avoiding for sometimes decades since our youth, and just shining the light of awareness onto yourself. And there's many techniques and many things you can do. The one that I teach allows you to release these stuck feelings without having to really understand or remember the cause or the root effect, what happened for it to be there, but you just focus on sensations to release them so that you can go back to taking action. So that's the opportunity there when you do feel triggered by something from the past, is not to push it away. The trigger is pointing to something that needs healing. That's your opportunity. There was an ant walking around on the lens, and that's also part of living in Bali, a beautiful experience. Okay. So, another question from David. How do top performers manage their time and prioritize tasks to achieve maximum productivity? Maximum productivity. So everyone has a different way of managing their time, and there's lots of scheduling hacks out there. One of the funniest ones that I've heard recently, and if it works for you, it works for you, is to manage to schedule worry time. And if you're wondering what worry time is, it's exactly what it says. What it means is to schedule an hour on Saturday morning when you worry. So that throughout the week, if you have worrisome thoughts that arise, you just say to yourself, I'm not going to worry about this right now because I've got that hour scheduled Saturday morning to think about my worries. Maybe that works, but even that requires thought awareness. Because if the worry pulls you into the thought and you go down that rabbit hole for 5 or 10 minutes, you're lost. You've lost the present moment, the connection to right now. You're not seeing opportunities. You're just in this kind of foggy state. And it really is a fog when we're lost in thought. And studies show that we're lost in thought over 50%, sometimes as much as 70% of the day, that we're thinking about things that are completely irrelevant to the task at hand, things that we have no control over at this moment, things that we can't even impact, even if we were in a different situation. We're lost in thought so much. Just imagine regaining, through a thought awareness practice, through mindfulness, regaining all of that time back. You're regaining life. So we spend so much effort on being healthy and living long lives, but if we're lost in thought more than half of the day, we're losing a lot of real time while we're in those rabbit holes. So even there, coming back to what's happening now is more important. And the top performer is able to catch themselves drifting because they focused on their body awareness. They're in their body, more connected to their sensations. And the sensations keep you present. If you're always feeling what's happening in your body, your sensations, if you're connected to your senses, you're hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, feeling all the things happening around you, you're present. It's that simple. Nature gave us an incredible gift. Just stay alert to your senses. If you look at nature, the squirrel, the bird, the tree, everything's alert and it's super present. And yeah, they also have to look out for not being eaten by the next predator. but that keeps them alert. And we're, in a stage of evolution where we don't have to look around and make sure there's no lion who wants to eat us. But and that's maybe why the mind has started to just kind of drift and create other problems that aren't real. But ultimately, we can recreate this alertness by staying connected to our senses. So how you manage that, if you keep track of a to-do list, then do the to-do list approach, but do it one task at a time. Stay with each task as you're doing it, and notice when your mind drifts. That's the important, the mindfulness component, because usually when we get lost in thought, we're not aware of it until we come back out of it. So that time that you're lost in thought, that's where the improvement is. So to notice sooner, oh my gosh, I was just lost in thought again. To notice when the mind starts to drift, in fact, that's even more ideal, because you can pull yourself back from that immediately. And that's just a muscle. It's an awareness muscle. And you can train it, and you can train it like any other muscle, going to the gym. And that will pay dividends like no other exercise. Thought awareness of noticing if your thoughts are telling you something negative, if you attach yourself to that thought, if you give your attention to that thought, you become that thought. The things we give our attention to become the contents of our life, of our internal makeup. So give your attention to 78% of your thoughts that are negative, then you're going to feel 78% negative. So the choice is really with awareness, to have space around your thoughts that you can choose which ones to give your attention to. And then you can up level and uplift yourself very quickly, actually, because you have the awareness to say, I'm not giving my attention to that thought. It doesn't feel good. It's negative. I can't impact it anyway. It's just some random thought. We get barraged by stuff all the time. But over here, this is a thought that comes along that is uplifting, that's beneficial. I want to take action on it, that it enhances the contents of my life. And then you give your attention to that thought, and then another thought like that. And then positive thoughts build on each other. All thoughts build on each other. The ones you give your attention to tend to have little child thoughts attached to them that come in the wake of it. So having that awareness to give your attention to thoughts and situations that bring about positive emotions is your key to permanent happiness. Again, the high achiever tends to think that once you reach the goal, happy when syndrome, that you will be happy then. And it doesn't happen, because life is continuous and always moving, as we talked about. But that permanent happiness that you're actually seeking as a high achiever from the outcome, only to learn that it's impermanent happiness, that permanent happiness is the state within. It's the rising above the situation, the roller coaster experience of life. Things will always be up and down. But if you can sink into the seat of your awareness, where you're almost watching TV, you may have heard this in some other teachings, where you're watching life happen like on a screen, the story of your life unfolding. In fact, when we go to the movies, we often, usually the way at least Hollywood scripts are written, is that the would-be hero experiences some trauma in the first half hour or so of the film. But we don't say stop to the projector guy, and we don't get upset and we're crying and why is this happening? We all know that this is happening so that the hero can recognize, the protagonist can recognize the hero within themselves, and then step up to the plate and grow and become, and embrace the superpower that they have and become the hero of their own journey. So the same thing applies to us. These quote unquote bad things that happen are ultimately opportunities to recognize the hero inside of us, and they make us grow. So organizing oneself around these principles is a top performer trait, and you'll only keep growing. I saw another question flash up on the screen, and we're kind of coming to the end, so this will be the last one. Stephanie from the US. What do you think the root problem of the workplace culture that prevent us from being a top performer and connect us to our inner truth? Yeah, well, workplace cultures, every place is different. And I've done a ton of consulting for Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies, but also a lot of startups. I founded my own companies, and mentored for small and medium-sized companies. And every place has a different culture. So, but as from a blanket statement perspective, there's a lot of tall poppy syndrome in the workplace, meaning if you're different, if you stand out, others become jealous, and they tend to they want to mow you down. Often you just have a lot of conflicting personalities. You have people with greater awareness and less awareness, people with different life priorities, all coming together in one place, and that can be challenging. And sometimes it feels like it pulls you down to the lowest common denominator. And there's some truth to that, just because you're trying to make place for all these different walks of life, none of which are right or wrong. It's just everyone is on their own journey. When you put people who are at different points in their journey, different stations, all together in the same place, it might lead to some clash. I've experienced plenty of those over the years. So you have a responsibility there as a more aware person. You have the ability to be the arbitrator and the facilitator of the unfolding of these situations, because you bring greater awareness to the situation, as opposed to others who might just feel triggered and react to the trigger. You have a mindfulness practice now that, if you don't, you should, where you're able to assess the situation, not react to it, but actually respond to what's there. Your problem solver mindset, that's top performer, is right. You're solution oriented. You're not insisting on it being a certain way. You're just working with what's there. And then that makes you a valuable asset. Actually, your worth to the company will only improve because you're able to, you stay out of blame or finger pointing, but you're looking, okay, this is the situation. Again, accepting what is. It's a top performer trait. Accepting what is, not being in resistance and wanting it to be different, but accepting what is, and then what can we do from here? What clear action can we take from here? One more question? Two more questions? All right, two more questions, then that'll be it. Because we want to do a short meditation at the end of this as well. Oh, it's a comment. Okay. Productivity strikes me as a word that belongs more to the high achiever realm. Joy, growth, focus are top performer traits, and when embracing those, we will be focused on the process and the learning, not how many widgets we produce. Yeah, Carolee, awesome. That sums it up. Yeah, productivity has that ting of just goal and working hard. And again, that's a high achiever. And I was the epitome of a high achiever. I used to call my life was brick on brick. I was putting one brick and another brick and another brick, because I knew if I build that structure, I'm going to get to my goal. But it was hard because you're lifting bricks all day, and you're so focused on the outcome, because if somebody interferes with my bricklaying, then it's going to affect my supposed happiness that I'm trying to achieve, and I'm missing out on everything in the meantime. So there's a way to work smarter, not harder. That should be a top performer kind of motto, mantra, is to, and we've all heard this, right? Work smarter, not harder. And a top performer works smarter. I would even take the word work out of there. They are flowing. They are flowing smarter. They are responding. They are. We have a whole whiteboard here in our I don't want to call it a war room, but this is where the ideas are generated for these sessions. Top performers are flexible. They attract. They craft clarity. They operate on a growth mindset, and they have a positive outlook. They're in non-resistance, fulfillment, freedom. Oh my gosh, freedom. When you're free to respond instead of in these shackles of expectations. Such a different experience of life. I could go on and on and on. Action, light, creative, efficient. So great comment there, Carolee, that productivity is almost outdated. Okay, last one here from Steve. How can I consciously help myself surrender to changing or letting go of fear or anger when it seems often like an unconscious process to really let go? Great question. It really goes to the root of reactivity. When our reactivity is instant, meaning we feel triggered by a person, place, or thing, and we immediately react to it, there's really no gap. There's no awareness around like the ability to choose whether or not you're going to engage with this person, place, or thing. You're just so quickly reactive that your emotions spike, you lose the equanimity of your mind. And with that, when there's instant reactivity, you can't, this takes us to the second part of your question, you can't really surrender yourself to it. You can't accept the situation as it is. That's a form of surrender. You can't, it's much harder to give yourself over to your higher self or a higher power, which is, a big form of surrender, because you're so tight between a situation happening or somebody saying something and your reaction to it. There's no gap there. It's instant. And we have to create a gap there. We have to create some breathing room around our sensations, our feelings about a situation, so that we can then have some space to surrender, accept the situation as it is, stay out of mental, emotional reactivity, and in many cases, give ourselves over to a higher power, which is super, super important. That's higher power can be your inner wisdom, right? When you're in instant reactivity, you won't be able to, like I described earlier, tap into this inner wisdom, this GPS that is our body, because we're overtaken by the reactive part of our brain. It pulls us up into our head. And you can also not just, for those of you who work with guides or giving yourself over to a higher power, that you don't have the space there to do that because you're just in instant reactivity. So there too, my suggestion would be to practice a form of mindfulness, a thought of self-awareness that focuses on observing your thoughts and observing your thoughts and observing your feelings. If your feelings are sensations that show up in your body, this is key. In my journey, once I realized it was a game changer, is to recognize that all your feelings show up somewhere in your body as sensations. And when you can observe the sensation, then you've cut the line, you've severed the reactive part. So something happens, somebody says something around you, and it triggers you. You feel that trigger somewhere in your body. And if you can generate enough awareness to go, well, wow, I feel triggered right here. A lot of emotions are in our stomach. Ooh, or I feel it in the back of the head, back of my neck, or it's my heart is thumping. If you can live in the awareness of your body more to notice, oh, this is where the feeling is showing up, then that keeps you out of reactivity. And then you have that choice to, you know what, I'm going to give this to my higher power. This is a problem I don't need to concern myself with. Or my guides, here, you guys take care of this. And so you can surrender to that. Or you can just, you're able to see the situation as it is when you stay out of reactivity. And then just naturally, you will take clear action. You're not bringing in the past and trauma or past solutions even, but you're because every situation is unique, and what's worked in the past may not work for this particular situation. Sometimes the correlations are just very broad. You think something you solved might work for this, but it's a new situation. Take it in fully, observe it for what it is, and staying out of reactivity is the key to observing things as they are. And the key, when you observe things as they are, it means you're present. You're staying present. We've all heard this so many times. The key to really enjoying the flow of life and being part of the unfolding and creativity, the unknown, the great unknown, rather than being afraid of it. High achievers are so afraid of the unknown. Oh my gosh, no, I need to achieve my goal for my happiness, and therefore the unknown is the enemy. And that's why I need to control and steer and plan and overthink and overexert, myself constantly. So to come out of all of that and to go with the flow and to learn to really unfold with life as it's happening, that will keep you happy and joyful, as Carolee had mentioned earlier, and focused on the experience of right now, which is the content of your life, which is that your degree of happiness is right now. So that's the focus of a top performer. We're at the top of the hour and a few minutes over. So, oh yes, if you are interested in, I see the prompt, one-on-one coaching. If you really want to go deep, so I offer one-on-one coaching. Just reach out. And of course, there's the weekly workshops that I offer that are part of becoming an Inner Power member. So you get access to the Q&As like this. Also live meditation, guided meditations you can download, and unlimited downloads. And we'll do more specific workshops around different features of transitioning and moving to the life of a top performer. And if you really want to embrace yourself and be surrounded by a community of like-minded, right? That's so important too. It's in my own journey, I always felt alone, and that is hard. And when you're surrounded by people who get it, they get you, they're on the same wavelength, they're at a similar station in life, it can make all the difference. It keeps you motivated, it keeps you accountable. And so please, I encourage you to join the Inner Power community for that reason. So to wrap things up, I'm going to take everyone through a quick, let's do a 10-minute thought awareness meditation. And this will give you a taste of, it's a very simple exercise. It's essentially focusing on breath. It's breath work. Your breath is always there. You can apply this in starting immediately. Those of you who are new and those who have attended previous sessions, it's a good reminder. We always need reminders that in any situation, if you just focus on the incoming, outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils, it will center you, it will ground you, it will bring you back to the present moment right before you have to jump on an important call or do a meeting. In sports, I do this between points when I play tennis. Rather than get upset about just hitting the ball into the net, I refocus and bring myself back, and everything will improve. Everything will become smoother. You will be open to the wisdom, the infinite creativity that arises from being present. And it's such a simple exercise. You can do it throughout the day. There's little moments here or there. Do it for 5 seconds. Do it for 15 seconds. Do it for a minute if you have the time, but you don't even need to do it more than that. We are going to do it for 10 minutes now just to get a strong grounding and foundation in it. But then this is something you can do in just little moments here or there while you're doing chores, just to get yourself centered again and into top performance shape. All right. Okay, so let's do this. Find a comfortable position. And with your eyes and mouth closed, focus on the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. If you have trouble locating your breath, you may breathe slightly harder once or twice. And once you feel the touch of your breath, return to natural breath, normal breath. Observing your breath as it is, not wanting it to be different. Let the detail of your breath pull you in closer, closer into the present moment. If it's more in the left nostril, let it be the left nostril. If it's more in the right nostril, let it be the right nostril. Or if it's in both nostrils, let it be both. Notice the temperature of the incoming breath. Notice the temperature of the outgoing breath. Notice if there's a difference. Notice the pace of the incoming breath. Notice the pace of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. And whenever you find that your mind has wandered, simply notice it. And with as little frustration as possible, simply return your attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. Natural breath, normal breath. Observe your breath as it is, not wanting it to be different. When you feel ready, you can gradually open your eyes. Notice your environment. Notice yourself in your environment. Notice the energy in your body. Notice your aliveness. There's so much power in stillness. It's really that space that we're looking to create around our thoughts and around our feelings. That is the stillness. It's the source of all creation, creativity, source of our wisdom. That is awareness. It's that space. So I thank you all for joining. I hope you found the information helpful and practical. I see some hearts. Thank you. Sending hearts back. And like I said, as an Inner Power member, we do these things every week. So I hope to welcome you as part of the group. And if you're on the mailing list, you'll also receive word from upcoming events. And yes, that's the free trial right there. And really take what we practiced today to heart. The first part was all about information. It's helpful to know things. It's the first step to change, is to intellectually grasp things. The next big step, however, is to practice things and integrate them into your being, into your body. And that's where the mindfulness meditation comes into play. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening. If you're in the States, great way to cap the weekend and take all of this wisdom and clarity into your new week. And I wish you all the best, and we'll see you soon. Till next time.